The sound of dishes crashing to the floor was my first memory of La Maison. I was 5 years old, watching in horror as my father's career as a restaurateur came crashing down, literally and figuratively. That night, as he swept up broken plates and dreams, he told me something I'd never forget. Sophia, in this business, you either own the restaurant or the restaurant owns you. 25 years later, those words still echo in my mind as I stand in the kitchen of Taste, watching my staff prepare for another busy night. They don't know I own this place. None of them do, except for my lawyer and accountant. To everyone else, I'm just Sophia Martinez, the quiet consultant who occasionally drops by to observe operations. My family? They think I'm a failed chef who couldn't hack it in culinary school. They're not entirely wrong about the culinary school part. I dropped out after 2 semesters. What they don't know is that I left because I was too busy buying my first failing restaurant and turning it around for a profit. You're throwing your life away, Mom had said when I quit school. Look at your sister Olivia, graduating medical school with honors, making something of herself. Ah, Olivia, the golden child, the successful surgeon who could do no wrong. Every family dinner became a celebration of her latest achievement, while my presence was tolerated with thinly veiled disappointment. But I had a plan. While they thought I was floundering, I was building an empire. One restaurant at a time, I acquired failing establishments, revitalized them, and either sold them for profit or kept them in my growing portfolio. I operated through a maze of holding companies and LLCs, keeping my name off any public documents. In the restaurant industry, anonymity was power. Taste was my crown jewel. When it came on the market 3 years ago, my family was devastated. It had been their favorite restaurant for special occasions, birthdays, anniversaries, celebrations of Olivia's endless achievements. The previous owner, an old-school French chef, had run it into the ground with mismanagement and an outdated menu. I bought it through one of my companies, poured millions into renovations, and transformed it into the hottest reservation in the city. The irony of my family still dining here, never knowing it was mine, gave me a quiet satisfaction. Ms. Martinez. Miguel, my general manager, approached with a tablet in hand. The private party for tonight. The Martinez Group. They've requested some special arrangements. My stomach tightened. Tonight was Mom's 60th birthday celebration, organized by Olivia, of course. I'd received the invitation 2 weeks ago, a reluctant inclusion that made it clear my presence was more obligation than desire. What kind of arrangements? I asked, though I already had a feeling I knew. They've requested 20 seats at the main table, but Miguel looked uncomfortable. They've asked for an additional small table near the kitchen for 1 guest. They said it's for family who's, more comfortable with the staff. The knife twisted deeper. Same old Olivia, finding ways to put me in my place. She probably told the restaurant it was for a socially awkward cousin or something equally dismissive. I see. I kept my voice neutral. And the main table arrangements? Miguel scrolled through his tablet. Dr. Olivia Martinez specified the seating. She's placed herself next to her husband Daniel at the head of the table, with their parents next to them. Then various aunts, uncles, cousins. He paused. She was very particular about the champagne service, only for the main table. Of course she was. Heaven forbid the family disappointment get a glass of champagne. I spent the rest of the afternoon in my hidden office above the kitchen, watching the security feeds as my family arrived. Mom and Dad first, Mom resplendent in a new designer dress. Then Olivia and Daniel, her surgeon husband, looking like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all dressed to impress. I arrived last, wearing a simple black dress that probably cost less than Olivia's shoes. The hostess, following instructions she didn't know came from my sister, led me to the small table near the kitchen doors. "You can sit here," Olivia said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Where you belong." She smirked, adjusting her diamond necklace. "After all, you always said you wanted to work in restaurants." The rest of the family tittered politely at her joke. Mom looked embarrassed, but said nothing. Dad suddenly became very interested in his menu. I sat down at my lonely table, watching the champagne being poured at the main table, listening to the toasts and laughter. Each time the kitchen door swung open, I caught glimpses of my staff, working with the precision and excellence I demanded when I rebuilt this place. Miguel approached my table, looking nervous. He knew me as the consultant who signed his paychecks, but he'd been instructed by Olivia to treat me like an unwanted guest. "Can I get you some water?" he asked quietly. I looked up at him, then at my family celebrating without me, then back at the manager who had no idea he was speaking to the owner of not just this restaurant, but 5 others across the city. "Actually," I said, reaching for my phone, "I think it's time for some changes to tonight's service." The next few hours would teach my family a lesson about judging books by their covers. And maybe, just maybe, they'd finally understand that success doesn't always wear a designer label or come with a medical degree. Little did they know, they were celebrating in my house. And in my house, everyone eventually learns their place at the table. I've learned something important in my years of running restaurants. Timing is everything. Whether you're plating a perfect souffle or destroying someone's illusions of superiority, it all comes down to the exact right moment. Sitting at my isolated table, I watched my family through new eyes. The way Olivia held court at the head of the table, regaling everyone with stories of her latest surgical triumph. How Mom beamed with pride while Dad nodded along, occasionally glancing at his phone to check stock prices. The cousins, aunts, and uncles all orbiting around them like satellites around a sun. 20 years of dismissal and condescension had led to this moment. But before I could make my move, Olivia decided to twist the knife one more time. "Oh, Miguel," she called out to my manager, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Could you please make sure my sister gets the special menu?" She threw me a smirk. "The one with prices removed. We wouldn't want her to worry about the cost." Miguel looked uncomfortable, knowing full well I signed his paychecks as the consultant. But he had his instructions from the party organizer. He brought me a menu, apologetic eyes meeting mine. "The special menu, as requested," he murmured. I opened it, noticing how Olivia watched expectantly, waiting for my humiliation. Instead, I smiled. "Miguel," I said clearly, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "please bring me your wine list, the complete one, including the reserve cellar." Olivia's eyebrows shot up. The reserve cellar at Taste was legendary. Bottles ranging from $500 to $50,000, carefully curated over years. Access was by invitation only, something she tried and failed to obtain despite her status as a regular customer. "Safia," Mom called from the main table, her voice tight with embarrassment. "Don't be difficult. You know you can't afford." "Actually," I cut in, "I think I'll have the 1982 Chateau Lafite Rothschild." I turned to Miguel. "From the private collection in Cellar 3. The room went quiet. Even the regular diners knew about that bottle. $15,000 of liquid history, part of a collection that the mysterious owner of Taste had reportedly acquired at auction. Miguel's eyes widened slightly. He knew that only one person could authorize that bottle. "Right away, Ms. Martinez," he said, a new note of respect in his voice. "Sofia, stop this immediately," Dad snapped, his face reddening. "You can't just order." "I can," I said calmly, "and I will." In fact, I stood up, straightening my simple black dress. "Miguel, please open the reserve cellar. I think it's time we shared some of our best bottles with the entire party." Olivia shot up from her seat. "You can't do that. Do you have any idea how much those bottles cost? They'll add it to Mom's bill. And—" "No," I said softly. "They won't." I walked to the center of the room, where all eyes were now on me. 20 years of being the family disappointment, the failed chef, the cautionary tale. It all ended tonight. "You see, Olivia, there won't be any bill tonight. Not for the wine, not for the food, not for anything." I paused, letting the tension build. "Because you can't charge the owner for dining in their own restaurant." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the wheels turning in Olivia's head, trying to process what I'd just said. Mom's hand flew to her throat, clutching her pearls. Dad's phone slipped from his fingers, clattering onto his plate. "What? What are you talking about?" Olivia managed finally. I smiled, the same smile I'd practiced in boardrooms and business negotiations. "Let me make this very clear. I own Taste. Not just Taste, actually. I own Le Petit Jardin downtown, Marina Bay on the waterfront, Rustico in the financial district, Cloud 9 at the top of the Anderson building, and Bistro 55 in the theater district." Each name landed like a blow. They knew these restaurants, the most exclusive, most successful establishments in the city. Places where they'd celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, Olivia's promotions. Places they'd bragged about getting reservations to, never knowing their failed chef of a relative signed the checks. That's impossible," Mom whispered. "Those restaurants are owned by the Martinez Restaurant Group." "Yes," I agreed. "They are. Martinez Restaurant Group, founded by Sofia Martinez, incorporated 7 years ago." I turned to Miguel. "Could you please bring my laptop from my office? The one above the kitchen." As Miguel hurried off, I could see the reality starting to sink in for my family. Every dismissive comment, every condescending remark, every time they'd look down on my failure, it was all coming back to haunt them. But you dropped out of culinary school," Olivia sputtered. "You couldn't even finish your training." "I dropped out because I was too busy buying my first restaurant," I corrected her. "A failing Italian place in the business district. Bought it for pennies on the dollar, turned it around in 6 months, sold it for triple the investment. Used that money to buy 2 more failing restaurants. Rinse and repeat." Miguel returned with my laptop. I opened it, logging into the restaurant's systems. With a few keystrokes, every screen in the restaurant, the ones usually showing wine selections and daily specials, switched to display the Martinez Restaurant Group's holdings and financial statements. Current annual revenue across all properties, $35 million, I announced. Net profit last year, $12 million. Market value of the restaurant group, approximately $150 million. The numbers hit them like physical blows. I could see Dad, the former accountant, mouthing the figures in shock. Olivia had gone pale, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the edge of the table. "All those times you seated me by the kitchen," I continued, my voice carrying in the hushed room, All those times you made jokes about my restaurant career. I was signing your checks. Every bottle of wine you ordered to impress your friends. Every special table you requested. Every time you dropped my name to get a reservation. You were trading on my reputation without even knowing it. The look on their faces was almost worth 20 years of condescension. Almost. But I wasn't done yet. Because timing, as I said, is everything. And I had saved my best course for last. The thing about revenge, like fine wine, is that it's best served at precisely the right temperature. Too cold, and you lose the subtle notes. Too warm, and it overwhelms the palate. As I stood in my restaurant, watching my family process the revelation of my success, I felt a strange sense of calm. The expensive bottle of wine arrived, and I gestured for Miguel to pour glasses for everyone, even at my former lonely table by the kitchen. A toast, I said, lifting my glass, to assumptions and to their consequences. Olivia remained frozen. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the shock on her face. Mom kept opening and closing her mouth, like a fish out of water. Dad, ever the accountant, had pulled out his phone and was frantically Googling the Martinez restaurant group. But why? Mom finally managed. Why didn't you tell us? Tell you? I laughed softly. When would that have been appropriate? During the family dinners where you only talked about Olivia's accomplishments. Or maybe during those lovely holiday gatherings where you introduced me as your daughter who works in restaurants, like it was some kind of terminal illness. We were worried about you, Dad protested weakly, still staring at his phone. We thought you were struggling. No, I corrected him. You wanted me to struggle. You needed me to struggle, because my failure made Olivia's success shine brighter. Olivia finally found her voice. That's not fair. Not fair? I cut her off. Let's talk about fair, dear sister. I pulled out my tablet and pulled up some records. Let's discuss the 12 times you called my office, not knowing it was mine, demanding special treatment at my restaurants, or the time you tried to get my manager fired at Le Petit Jardin because he wouldn't give you a table without a reservation. The color drained from her face. That was, I didn't. Or perhaps, I continued, my voice steel wrapped in silk. We should discuss the review you posted online about Marina Bay last month. The one where you claimed to know the owner personally and threatened to have the chef fired. A gasp went around the table. Olivia had bragged about that review, about how she'd shown that uppity restaurant its place. I didn't know it was yours, she whispered. That's exactly the point. You didn't know, but you acted that way anyway. All of you did. I looked around the table at my assembled family. You treated service workers, restaurant staff, and anyone you thought was beneath you with contempt. And all the while, you were dining in my establishments, enjoying my success, and benefiting from my hard work. I nodded to Miguel, who disappeared into the kitchen. A moment later, he returned with a team of servers, each carrying folders. Inside these folders, I announced, you'll find some interesting documents. Financial records of every meal you've enjoyed in my restaurants, every special favor you've requested, every time you've dropped my name or claimed connections to get what you wanted. The servers distributed the folders. Hands shaking, my relatives opened them. You'll also find, I continued, receipts for every Christmas bonus I've anonymously given to the staff you've berated. Every tip I've added to make up for the ones you've skipped. Every repair bill for the things you've broken during your entitled tantrums. Mom was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. But I wasn't finished. And finally, I said, my voice carrying in the silent restaurant, you'll find lifetime bans from all Martinez Restaurant Group properties. Effective immediately. The explosion was immediate. You can't do this, Olivia shrieked, standing up so fast her chair toppled backward. We're family. Family? I raised an eyebrow. Was it family when you seated me by the kitchen tonight? Was it family when you mocked my career choice for 20 years? Was it family when you treated my staff, people who depend on me for their livelihoods, like they were beneath you? Safia, please. Mom pleaded. We can fix this. We didn't know. That's right, Mom. You didn't know. You never bothered to find out. You were too busy planning parties to celebrate Olivia's every minor achievement to notice that your other daughter was building an empire. I turned to Miguel. Please escort them out, all of them, and make sure their bans are implemented across all properties immediately. As security began to move forward, Dad stood up. Wait, the bill, for tonight. Consider it my last gift, I said coldly. A final meal in one of my restaurants. Though I doubt you'll enjoy the taste of humble pie. I watched as they were escorted out, my proud family reduced to shocked whispers and backward glances. Olivia tried to protest one last time at the door, but the sight of additional security guards convinced her to leave quietly. Once they were gone, I addressed the other diners, who had watched the scene unfold with rapt attention. I apologize for the disruption, I said. Your meals tonight are on the house. Please, enjoy the rest of your evening. The applause that followed was unexpected but warming. I nodded to Miguel to bring me the expensive bottle of wine at my small table by the kitchen. My favorite spot, as it turned out. The place where I could hear the rhythm of my restaurant, feel its heartbeat. Over the next few weeks, the calls and messages poured in. Apologies, explanations, justifications. Mom left tearful voicemails about how proud she was, how she'd always believed in me. She hadn't. Olivia's messages swung between anger and attempted reconciliation. Dad sent lengthy emails analyzing my business success, offering unsolicited advice about tax strategies. I ignored them all. 6 months later, I opened my newest restaurant, a small, intimate place called Second Chances. The concept was simple. We hired people who needed a fresh start, trained them in the culinary arts, and gave them the opportunity I'd made for myself. On opening night, as I stood in the kitchen watching my new staff prepare for service, Miguel appeared at my side. Your family is outside, he said quietly. Your sister made a reservation under a different name. They're asking to speak with you. I thought about it for a moment, remembered the lonely girl at the table by the kitchen, remembered the years of dismissal and doubt. Then I thought about the empire I'd built, the success I'd achieved, the lives I was changing. Tell them, I said, tying on my apron and picking up a knife, that the owner is busy cooking, and remind them about their lifetime ban. Miguel smiled and headed out. I turned to my new staff, former addicts, ex-cons, abuse survivors, all getting their second chance. All right, everyone, I called out. Time to show the world what you can do. Remember what I always say. They joined in, voices strong and proud. In this business, you either own the restaurant or the restaurant owns you. I smiled, feeling the familiar heat of the kitchen, the energy of circus about to begin. This was my empire, built on hard work, skill, and the determination to prove everyone wrong. And the best revenge wasn't serving it cold. It was serving it perfectly prepared, beautifully plated, and completely out of reach. The kitchen doors swung open and another night of service began. In my restaurants, everyone eventually learns their place. Some just learn it the hard way. As for my family, they still try to get reservations at my restaurant sometimes, using different names or having friends make bookings for them. Each time, they're politely turned away. Each time, they learn again that success, like the best meals, is sweetest when earned. They say you can't choose your family, but you can choose how you deal with them. I chose to build an empire they couldn't enter, create success they couldn't claim, and find happiness they couldn't diminish. And every night, I still sit at that table by the kitchen, drinking expensive wine and listening to the symphony of a well-run restaurant. It turns out the best seat in the house was the one they thought was a punishment. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be cold. Sometimes it just needs to be served with perfect timing, impeccable presentation, and a side of lifetime ban. With an IQ of 152, you could be running companies, not teaching children their ABCs. I'd heard variations of this statement from my father throughout my life, but this time was different. This time, Harrison Bennett wasn't just expressing disappointment in his daughter's career choice. He was cutting me off completely. I'm Alexandra Bennett, Alex to my friends, and at 28, I'd finally done the unthinkable. I'd accepted a position as a high school teacher instead of joining Bennett Technologies, my family's thriving tech company. The mahogany paneled walls of my father's home office seemed to close in as he paced behind his desk, his custom Italian loafers wearing a path in the Persian carpet. My mother, Catherine, sat perfectly poised in her designer armchair, her expression a carefully crafted mask of concern. "Alexandra, darling," she said, her voice dripping with practiced patience, "you have to understand how this looks. We've invested everything in your education. The best private schools, Harvard Business School, leadership training, and now you want to throw it all away to teach teenagers." I straightened my spine, feeling the weight of my teaching credentials in my bag. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm using my education exactly how I want to use it. "How you want?" Dad's voice rose as he spun to face me. "What about what this family needs? The company needs. Your brother James is handling the technical side, but we need you for operations and strategy." It was all planned out. Ah, yes, the plan. The grand Bennett dynasty blueprint that had been laid out since before I was born. James would handle the engineering and product development, following in Dad's footsteps, while I would manage operations and eventually become CEO, inheriting Mom's role. Perfect symmetry, perfect succession. Except I had my own plans. "Dad, I've taught coding workshops for 3 years alongside my MBA. I've seen the impact direct education can have. The excitement when a student finally grasps a concept, the potential unleashed when. Potential?" He slammed his hand on the desk, making the family photos rattle. "You want to talk about potential? Bennett Technologies is about to sign the largest government contract in our history. We're talking billions in educational technology infrastructure. That's real impact." I knew about the contract. The ATech initiative, a massive project to modernize the entire state's educational technology infrastructure. Bennett Technologies was the frontrunner, but they still needed approval from the State Department of Education. And who do you think evaluates and implements these education contracts? I asked quietly. Teachers, education professionals, people who understand both technology and classroom realities. "Don't get smart with me," Dad snapped. "If you want to understand how technology works in education, you do it from the corporate side, not by grading papers and chaperoning proms." Mom stood up, smoothing her silk blouse. "Alexandra, we're just trying to protect you. Teaching is admirable, but the salary, the status." She shuddered delicately. "How will you maintain your lifestyle?" I looked around the office, at the symbols of wealth that had defined my upbringing. The rare art pieces, the antique furniture, the photos of our family at charity galas and yacht club events. Maybe I don't want that lifestyle. The words hung in the air like a death knell. Dad's face turned an alarming shade of red. "Then you won't have it. As of this moment, you're cut off. No more trust fund, no more allowance, no more family connections. If you want to live like a teacher, you'll do it without our support." "Harrison," Mom gasped, though I noticed she made no move to contradict him. "You have a choice, Alexandra," Dad continued, his voice cold. "Take your rightful place at Bennett Technologies, or face the consequences of your idealism." I stood up, surprising myself with how steady my legs felt. "I've already made my choice. I start at Franklin High School next month." "Then I suggest you start learning to live on a teacher's salary immediately." He turned his back to me. A clear dismissal. "Madeline will show you out." Mom gave me one last pleading look but remained silent as I walked out of the office. The housekeeper, Madeline, was waiting in the hallway, my coat already in her hands. She'd worked for our family for 20 years, had practically raised me while my parents built their empire. "Miss Alexandra," she whispered, slipping something into my pocket as she helped me with my coat. "You'll always have friends here." Outside, the autumn air was crisp as I walked to my car, a modest Prius I'd bought myself, much to my parents' horror. Inside my pocket, I found a folded envelope containing $2,000 in cash and a note in Madeline's careful handwriting. "For emergencies. Proud of you." I drove home to my new apartment, also modest, also self-funded, fighting back tears. Not of sadness, but of determination. My parents thought teaching was beneath me, a waste of potential. They had no idea that I was about to have more influence over their precious contract than they could imagine. Because what my family didn't know was that I hadn't just accepted any teaching position. Through my work with coding workshops and educational outreach, I had caught the attention of some very important people in the state's education department. People who were looking for someone with both educational experience and a deep understanding of technology infrastructure. My position at Franklin High was only part of my new role. The other part, the part I couldn't tell my parents about due to confidentiality agreements, was as special advisory chair to the State Education Technology Implementation Committee. In other words, I would be one of the key people evaluating and approving that billion-dollar contract my father was so excited about. But that would be a lesson for another day. Right now, I had curriculum planning to do and a classroom to prepare. After all, as any good teacher knows, the best revelations come after proper preparation. I pulled into my apartment complex, passing the gleaming high-rises where I used to live to reach my more humble building. A text from James lit up my phone. "They'll come around, Lex. They always do." I smiled sadly. My brother meant well, but he didn't understand. This wasn't about them coming around. It was about standing my ground, about proving that success isn't measured by the size of your office or the number of zeros in your bank account. Sometimes the most important lessons are the ones that hurt the most to teach, and I was about to give my parents an education they'd never forget. The first month of teaching at Franklin High School taught me more about leadership than any Harvard Business School course ever did. Standing in front of 30 teenagers, trying to make computer science both accessible and engaging, required skills that couldn't be learned from textbooks or board meetings. Miss Bennett, Maria Rodriguez, one of my brightest students, raised her hand during our coding workshop. Why do schools always get stuck with outdated technology? My cousin's private school has all the latest equipment, but here we're working with computers older than we are. The question hit close to home. The very contract my father was pursuing was meant to address this disparity, but I knew Bennett Technologies' proposal focused more on profit margins than educational equity. That's actually a complex issue, I began, seeing an opportunity for a real-world lesson. Who here knows anything about educational technology procurement? Blank faces stared back at me. Okay, let's break it down. When schools need technology, they have to go through a whole process. I started sketching on the whiteboard, creating a flowchart of the procurement process. By the end of class, my students understood more about educational infrastructure than most corporate executives I knew. After school, I headed to my other office, a sleek space in the State Education Department building downtown. As Special Advisory Chair, I had the responsibility of reviewing all major technology implementation proposals for the state schools. Alex, you need to see this, Sarah Martinez, my deputy, said it as I walked in. She handed me a thick folder with the Bennett Technologies logo emblazoned on it. Their final proposal just came in. I spent the next 3 hours reviewing the document, my heart sinking with each page. The technology was cutting edge, yes, but the implementation plan was clearly designed to maximize profit rather than educational impact. Schools would be locked into expensive service contracts, forced to upgrade on the company's schedule rather than their own, and smaller districts would receive lower priority support. They don't understand how schools actually work, I muttered, making notes in the margins. This would bankrupt half our districts within 5 years. Speaking of not understanding, Sarah said, handing me a newspaper. You might want to see this. It was the business section of the city paper. There, smiling from a photo, were my parents at a charity gala. The headline read, Bennett Technologies, set to revolutionize state education. The article quoted my father. Our company understands education better than anyone. This contract will transform how our children learn. I was still staring at the article when my phone buzzed. A text from my brother James. Dad's planning a big announcement dinner next week. They're so confident about the contract. They're already celebrating. Maybe you should come? Try to patch things up. Before I could respond, another message came through. This one from the family group chat I was still part of, though no one had addressed me directly in weeks. Mom's celebration dinner next Thursday at Le Cirque. Black tie. Harrison has a major announcement. Dad, time to show everyone what the Bennett family can achieve in education. Would be nice if ALL family members could demonstrate such commitment to educational excellence. The passive-aggressive dig wasn't subtle. I switched back to James's private message. They're inviting the whole board, major shareholders, even the press. Dad's convinced the contract is a done deal. Says their inside sources at the education department confirmed it's just a formality at this point. I felt a chill. Inside sources? I knew there had been rumors of Bennett Technologies trying to influence department officials. This would need investigation. The next week was a blur of activity. By day, I taught my students, working with outdated equipment, but seeing their enthusiasm for learning shine through regardless. By night, I pored over contract proposals, meeting with other committee members, and building a case for what our schools really needed. I also did something I'd never done before. I started documenting every interaction, every email, Every piece of evidence suggesting Bennett Technologies was trying to manipulate the contract process. If they were playing dirty, they needed to be exposed. 2 days before the celebration dinner, I received an official invitation. Not from my parents, but from Bennett Technologies' PR department. You are cordially invited to celebrate Bennett Technologies' groundbreaking achievement in educational technology. As a professional educator, your presence would add valuable perspective to this historic moment. They didn't even realize who I was. To them, I was just another teacher to be used as a prop in their corporate theater. I RSVP'd yes. That same afternoon, I finished my final review of their proposal. The verdict was clear. While their technology was impressive, their implementation plan would be disastrous for our schools. The contract couldn't be approved as written. I also finished compiling my evidence of their attempted contract manipulation. The file was damning. Emails showing improper contact with department officials, evidence of attempted bribes, documentation of false claims in their proposal. As I prepared for the celebration dinner, I thought about Maria's question about outdated computers, about all the students in underfunded schools who deserved better, about the difference between looking successful and actually making a difference. My parents thought they were about to teach me a lesson about success. Instead, they were about to learn one about integrity. I slipped my presentation materials and documentation into my bag, along with my Department of Education credentials. Tomorrow night, at their own celebration dinner, they would finally understand exactly what just a teacher could do. The stage was set for a lesson they'd never forget. And this time, I would be the one doing the teaching. Lee Sirk's private dining room sparkled with crystal and success. The city's business elite mingled over champagne, celebrating a victory not yet officially won. My father stood at the center of it all, holding court like a king in his empire. I arrived exactly on time, wearing a simple black dress that would have made my mother wince if she recognized me at all. For the first 20 minutes, I moved through the crowd unnoticed, just another teacher invited for show. Ladies and gentlemen, my father's voice boomed across the room. Thank you all for coming tonight. We're here to celebrate not just a contract, but a vision. Bennett Technologies is about to revolutionize education across our state. Applause rippled through the room. I watched my mother beam with pride, my brother James shift uncomfortably. He'd always been more honest than our parents. And the board members nod in self-satisfaction. In just a few days, Dad continued, we'll be signing the largest educational technology contract in state history. Our inside sources tell us it's a done deal. More applause. And to demonstrate our commitment to educators, we've invited several teachers to join us tonight. These are the people who will be using our technology, shaping young minds. His voice trailed off as he finally spotted me in the crowd. The color drained from his face. Alexandra? Hello, Dad, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Don't let me interrupt. You were saying something about inside sources and done deals. Mom's champagne glass nearly slipped from her fingers. James took a step forward, then thought better of it. What are you doing here? Dad's attempt at a smile looked more like a grimace. I was invited. I held up the PR department's invitation. As a professional educator, though I'm actually here in my other capacity, I reached into my bag and pulled out my credentials. As Special Advisory Chair of the State Education Technology Implementation Committee. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. I could see the wheels turning in every head as they processed what this meant. That's impossible, Mom finally managed. Why? Because I'm just a teacher. I walked to the front of the room, my heels clicking on the marble floor. Actually, that's exactly why I was chosen for the role. They needed someone who understood both technology and education. Someone who could evaluate proposals based on real classroom needs, not just profit margins. Dad's face had moved from white to red. Now see here. No, Dad. You see here. I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the room's display system. Let me share some findings from our proposal review. The next 10 minutes were brutal. I methodically took apart Bennett Technologies' implementation plan, showing how it would devastate school budgets, highlighting the predatory service contracts, demonstrating the impact on smaller districts. And then there's the matter of these emails. New documents filled the screen. Communications between Bennett Technologies and department officials, attempted bribes, false claims in official submissions. Would anyone like to explain these? The board members were now staring at my father with horror. Corporate lawyers in the crowd were already reaching for their phones. You can't do this, Dad spluttered. We're your family. Yes, we are. Which makes this even more disappointing. I turned to address the whole room. The contract proposal, as written, has been rejected. However, the committee has prepared a conditional approval framework that got everyone's attention. Bennett Technologies can resubmit a revised proposal that meets the following criteria: fair pricing structures for all districts, flexible implementation timelines, reduced service contract terms, and most importantly, a requirement that 30% of the contract value be reinvested in teacher training and support programs. That would cut our profit margins in half. Someone from the financial department protested. Yes, I agreed. It would bring them in line with ethical business practices for educational contracts. You have 48 hours to decide if you want to resubmit under these terms, or we move to the next qualified bidder. The room erupted in chaos. Board members huddled in corners. Lawyers whispered urgently to executives. And my parents just stared at me like they'd never seen me before. All this time, Mom said softly, "You were doing exactly what you taught me," I finished for her. "Making an impact on education, just not the way you planned." James approached, a hint of a smile on his face. "You know what this means. If we accept these terms, you'll be overseeing our company's largest contract." "No," I corrected him. "I'll be ensuring that students like Maria Rodriguez get the educational tools they deserve, regardless of which company provides them." The next few weeks were intense. Bennett Technologies ultimately accepted the committee's terms. They really didn't have a choice once their ethical violations came to light. The revised contract was actually better for everyone. Schools got fair terms, teachers got support, and the company maintained its market position, just with more reasonable profits. My parents? That took longer to resolve. Dad showed up at Franklin High 3 weeks after the dinner. I was teaching my coding class when he appeared in the doorway. "Miss Bennett," Maria called out, "isn't that your dad? The tech company guy?" "Yes," I said, watching him take in the classroom, the engaged students, the work we were doing with limited resources. "He's here to learn." "Alexandra," he said when class ended, I was wrong. About teaching, about you, about a lot of things." "I know," I replied. "That's why I had to teach you differently." We didn't hug it out. Things weren't that simple. But over time, something interesting happened. My father started showing up at school board meetings. My mother began advocating for educational causes. They didn't fully understand my choices, but they started respecting them. The trust fund remained cut off, but I didn't care. My teacher's salary, supplemented by my department role, was enough. I had something better than wealth. I had purpose. A year later, I received a letter from Maria Rodriguez. She'd been accepted to MIT on a full scholarship. Her application bolstered by the coding projects she'd completed in my class, using the new technology her school could finally afford. I pinned her acceptance letter next to my Harvard Business School diploma, two different kinds of success, both equally valuable. Sometimes the best lessons are the ones we never planned to teach. My parents thought they were punishing me by cutting me off from their world of wealth and corporate power. Instead, they freed me to build something more meaningful, a bridge between that world and the one where real education happens, one student at a time. As for being just a teacher, well, sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one making the loudest noise. Sometimes it's the one with the red pen, the lesson plan, and the ability to make a real difference. Just ask my parents. They learned that lesson the hard way. But then again, those are always the lessons we remember best. They say money changes people. I never truly understood what that meant until I watched my own brother transform from someone I'd take a bullet for into a stranger wearing a designer suit and a fake smile. I'm Emma Mitchell, 34, and until 6 months ago, I was the proud sister of Marcus Mitchell, Silicon Valley's newest self-made success story. At least, that's what Forbes called him in their 30 Under 30 feature. The truth? Well, that's a bit more complicated. Growing up, Marcus and I were inseparable. Just 14 months apart, we were more like twins than regular siblings. While our parents worked double shifts at their restaurant to keep us fed and clothed, we looked after each other. I helped Marcus with his math homework. He scared away the boys who tried to bully me in middle school. When I got my first job at 16, I split every paycheck with him so he could buy the computer parts he dreamed about. One day, he'd say, hunched over his latest technological experiment, I'm going to create something amazing. Something that'll change the world. And when I do, we'll never have to worry about money again. I believed him. How could I not? Marcus had always been brilliant, even if he was terrible at showing it in school. While other kids played video games, he learned to code. While they went to parties, he built computers from scraps he found at the local electronics recycling center. I was his biggest cheerleader, his constant supporter, and sometimes his only friend. When our parents' restaurant failed during the recession of 2008, I put my college plans on hold. Instead of pursuing my dream of becoming an architect, I took a job as a bank teller to help keep our family afloat. Marcus was devastated when I told him, "You can't give up college," he argued, his eyes filling with tears. "You've worked so hard for this." But I just smiled and hugged him. "It's not giving up," I told him. "It's investing in our future. You're going to do great things, little brother. Someone needs to make sure you get there." And for 10 years, that's exactly what I did. I worked my way up from teller to branch manager, taking night classes when I could afford them. Every spare dollar went into supporting Marcus's dreams. When he needed seed money for his first startup attempt, I emptied my savings account. When that failed, I took out a personal loan to fund his second try. When that one crashed too, I refinanced my small condo to give him one more shot. "Third time's the charm," I joked, handing him the check for $50,000. He hugged me so tight, I could barely breathe. "I'll pay you back double," he promised. "Triple. You'll see, Eve. This time, it's going to work." And surprisingly, it did. Mitchell Tech Solutions launched in 2020, just as the world was going digital. Their security software caught the attention of several major tech companies, and suddenly Marcus was everywhere. Tech magazines, business podcasts, startup conferences. My little brother had become the success story he'd always dreamed of being. I couldn't have been prouder. Even when he moved to a luxury apartment in San Francisco and started wearing suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, I was just happy to see him living his dream. The fact that he hadn't paid back any of my loans yet didn't bother me. He was busy, I told myself. Building an empire takes time. Then came the announcement. Marcus was getting married to Victoria Blackwood, daughter of telecommunications mogul Robert Blackwood, the woman he'd met at some exclusive tech conference 3 months ago. The wedding would be at the Blackwood estate in the Hamptons, with a guest list that read like a who's who of Silicon Valley. It's going to be perfect, Marcus told me over the phone, his voice distant and distracted. Victoria's planned everything. Oh, and she needs another $50,000 for the flowers and the ice sculpture. Can you help out? Just one last time. I was at the bank within the hour, taking out another loan against my condo. This was my brother's big day, his chance to truly become part of the elite circle he'd worked so hard to join. Of course, I would help. The wedding invitation arrived 2 weeks later, a gorgeous thing of handmade paper and gold leaf. I was admiring it at my kitchen table when my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Need to talk. Video call in 5. When his face appeared on my screen, something was different. The warmth in his eyes, the one that had survived all our struggles, was gone. In its place was something cold, calculating. There's been a change of plans, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. About the wedding. Victoria thinks it would be better if you didn't come. The world seemed to tilt sideways. What? It's just, he cleared his throat. The guest list includes some very important people. CEOs, investors, potential partners. Victoria thinks, well, we think it might be awkward having a bank manager there. It could affect some delicate business relationships. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. Marcus, I'm your sister. I've supported you through everything. I've given you every penny I had. And I appreciate that. He cut in, his voice taking on the smooth, practiced tone I'd heard him use in interviews. But this is about the future of Mitchell Tech. We're in talks with major investors. The Blackwoods have connections we can't afford to jeopardize. You understand, right? I didn't understand. Not at all. But as I opened my mouth to argue, to remind him of everything we'd been through together, a notification popped up on my laptop. Someone had just tried to access my work email, specifically the folder where I kept documentation of all my loans to Marcus. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about the wedding. This was about erasing the past, creating a new narrative where Marcus Mitchell was truly self-made, with no messy family ties to complicate his perfect success story. You're right, I heard myself say, my voice steady despite the tears burning behind my eyes. I understand completely. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the wedding invitation I could no longer use. Then I opened my laptop and started digging through years of financial records, emails, and text messages. If Marcus wanted to rewrite history, he should have remembered one thing. I'm the one who taught him to always keep receipts. What I found in the next few hours would change everything. But that night, I just sat there, watching the sun set through my kitchen window, mourning the loss of the brother I thought I knew. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. The real story, the one that would eventually attract the FBI's attention, was about to unfold in ways none of us could have predicted. The thing about working in banking for 15 years is that you develop an eye for patterns. Numbers tell stories if you know how to read them. And the story I uncovered in the week following Marcus's wedding invitation was one that made my blood run cold. It started with a simple review of the loans I'd given him. $50,000 for his first startup attempt in 2018. Another $50,000 for the second try in 2019. The $50,000 that supposedly launched Mitchell-Tech in 2020. And now, the final $50,000 for his wedding to Victoria. $200,000 total, all meticulously documented in my personal records. But something wasn't adding up. I remembered Marcus's first failed startup attempt, a mobile payment app that never made it past the development stage. The second was a cryptocurrency trading platform that collapsed within months. Both failures were painful, but they seemed honest. Technical issues, market timing, the usual startup problems. The third attempt, Mitchell-Tech Solutions, was different. It succeeded almost overnight, securing major contracts with tech giants within months of launch. The industry called it a miracle. Now I was starting to wonder if it was something else entirely. Just checking some historical records, I told my assistant at the bank when I requested access to all transaction records related to Marcus's business accounts. As his primary bank, we had handled most of Mitchell-Tech's early financial operations before they moved to bigger institutions. What I found sent chills down my spine. The $50,000 I had given Marcus for Mitchell-Tech had never been deposited into the company's account. Instead, it had been transferred through a series of smaller transactions to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. But Mitchell-Tech had still launched with significant capital, $2 million to be exact. Where had that money come from? I spent 3 sleepless nights tracing the money trail. Bank statements, wire transfers, corporate filings. I followed every breadcrumb. Each discovery felt like another punch to the gut. The prestigious security software that had put Mitchell-Tech on the map? It wasn't Marcus's creation at all. The original code had been developed by a small tech startup in Eastern Europe, a company that had mysteriously gone bankrupt just weeks before Mitchell-Tech launched. Their entire development team had vanished, their office abandoned overnight. And the $2 million that launched Mitchell-Tech, it had been routed through the same Cayman Islands account where my $50,000 had disappeared. The money originated from a series of compromised corporate accounts. Companies that had reported major security breaches in early 2020. My brother, my brilliant little brother who I'd supported all these years, hadn't created a revolutionary security software. He'd stolen one, using hacked funds to finance the operation. The evidence was there in the patterns of transactions, in the timestamps of code commits, in the suspicious coincidences that no one had bothered to investigate because everyone was too busy celebrating the next tech wonderkind. "Oh God, Marcus," I whispered to my empty apartment, staring at the wall of financial data I'd assembled. "What have you done?" But the real bombshell came when I dug deeper into Mitchell-Tech's current operations. The security software they sold to major corporations had a hidden feature, a backdoor that allowed unauthorized access to client systems. Mitchell-Tech wasn't just a fraud. It was potentially the largest corporate espionage operation I'd ever seen. My phone buzzed, another text from Marcus. "Hey, Em, about the wedding. Victoria's family is willing to compensate you for any inconvenience. Name your price." I looked at my laptop screen, at the evidence of years of fraud and theft. They thought they could buy my silence with money, the same way they thought they could erase my existence from Marcus's carefully crafted story. My hands shook as I typed out my reply. "No price needed. I understand completely." Then I turned back to my laptop and began organizing the evidence. Every transaction, every stolen line of code, every compromised client account. I documented it all. Years of banking experience helped me create an airtight paper trail, one that even the best lawyer's money could buy wouldn't be able to dispute. I also started receiving strange emails, thinly veiled threats from anonymous accounts, warning me to mind my own business and forget about the past. Someone had definitely noticed my digging. Time was running out. The wedding was in 3 days. The guest list included CEOs of companies that had been compromised by Mitchell Tech's backdoor, investors whose money had been used to launder the stolen funds, and tech journalists eager to celebrate another self-made success story. Perfect. I booked a flight to New York and packed my laptop. In my carry-on, I placed a USB drive containing every piece of evidence I'd gathered. A second copy was safely stored in an encrypted cloud account, set to automatically send to the FBI and SEC if anything happened to me. As I locked up my condo, another text from Marcus arrived. "Em, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Just name your price. Everyone wins." I thought about the brother who used to share his dreams with me, who promised we'd change the world together. I thought about the man he'd become, willing to steal, lie, and threaten to maintain his facade of success. "You're right," I texted back. "Everyone will get exactly what they deserve." The next morning, I boarded a flight to New York. In 48 hours, I would crash my brother's $1 million wedding. But first, I had some visits to make. To the FBI field office in Manhattan, to the SEC's Enforcement Division, and to a few very interested journalists. Marcus had always said he wanted to make headlines. Well, I was about to help him do exactly that. As the plane took off, I closed my eyes and remembered something our parents used to say back in the restaurant. The truth, like cream, always rises to the top. It was time to let the truth rise. The Hampton estate where the wedding would take place was visible from the air as we descended into New York. A sprawling mansion by the ocean, its grounds transformed into a fairy tale venue for what the society pages were calling the tech wedding of the year. Little did they know, it was about to become famous for very different reasons. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. From my hotel room in Southampton, I could see the steady stream of luxury cars heading toward the Blackwood estate. Caterers, florists, and event staff had been bustling since dawn, preparing for what People magazine had dubbed the tech industry's royal wedding. I took my time getting ready. The slate gray dress I'd chosen was expensive but understated, professional rather than celebratory. My laptop bag, containing everything needed to destroy my brother's carefully constructed world, felt heavy on my shoulder. "Mom, this is a private event," the security guard at the estate entrance said when I pulled up in my rental car. "I'll need to see your invitation." I smiled and handed him my business card instead. "I'm Emma Mitchell, sister of the groom. There's been a slight misunderstanding about my invitation. Why don't you call Marcus and let him know I'm here?" The guard looked uncertain, but I saw the moment he registered my last name. He stepped away to make a call, and I waited, watching more guests arrive in their designer outfits and luxury vehicles. 5 minutes later, Marcus appeared, looking immaculate in his custom tuxedo. But I could see the tension in his jaw, the barely controlled panic in his eyes. "Em, what are you doing here?" he hissed, pulling me aside. "We discussed this. You can't be here." "Actually," I said, keeping my voice level, "we need to talk. Now, before the ceremony." "There's nothing to talk about. I've offered to compensate you." "For what, Marcus?" For the $200,000 in loans? For erasing me from your life? Or for using my banking credentials to help you launder stolen money? The color drained from his face. Behind him, I could see Victoria approaching in a silk robe, her professional makeup only half complete. "Marcus, darling, is everything all right?" she called out. Then she saw me, and her perfectly shaped eyebrows drew together in annoyance. "What is she doing here?" "She was just leaving," Marcus said quickly, gripping my arm. "Weren't you, Em?" I pulled free of his grasp. "No, actually, I think I'll stay. I've brought a wedding gift that everyone needs to see." Victoria's face hardened. "Security," she called out. "I wouldn't do that," I said calmly, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Unless you want the FBI agents parked down the street to come in early. They're very interested in Mitchell Tech's operations, especially that back door in your security software. The one you've been using to steal corporate secrets from your clients." A small crowd had gathered now, drawn by the drama unfolding at the entrance. I could see Robert Blackwood, Victoria's father, pushing through the onlookers. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "Nothing," Marcus said quickly. "Just a family misunderstanding. And please, let's talk about this privately." I shook my head. No more private talks. No more secrets. I turned to address the growing crowd of guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting the festivities. But there's something you need to know about the man you're here to celebrate." "Stop this," Marcus pleaded, reaching for me again. But I was already pulling out my laptop. "Your invitation said no gifts were necessary, but I brought one anyway. A presentation about how Mitchell Tech really started, about where that revolutionary security software really came from, about what it's been doing to your company's systems all this time." Robert Blackwood stepped forward, his face darkening. "What is she talking about, Marcus?" "She's lying," Victoria cut in. "She's just jealous of Marcus's success. Security, remove her?" "Before you do," I said loudly, "you might want to check your phone, Mr. Blackwood. I believe you just received some very interesting emails about your future son-in-law's business practices." The crowd murmured as phones started buzzing. I timed my evidence dumps perfectly. Emails going out to all major Mitchell Tech clients and investors just as I arrived at the wedding. Marcus lunged for my laptop, but it was too late. I'd already connected it to the venue's massive display screens, the ones meant to show romantic photos during the reception. Instead, they now displayed transaction records, code snippets, and irrefutable evidence of years of fraud. "That $2 million startup capital," I announced to the stunned crowd. "Stolen from hacked corporate accounts, the security software you're all using. Stolen from a small company in Eastern Europe after Marcus arranged for their mysterious bankruptcy. And that backdoor you never knew about. It's been collecting your corporate secrets for 2 years." The chaos that erupted was almost beautiful in its completeness. CEOs frantically calling their IT departments, investors shouting into phones, journalists who had come to cover a society wedding suddenly finding themselves with a much bigger story. "You ruined everything," Marcus snarled, his carefully crafted mask finally cracking completely. "I gave you a chance to name your price." "Some things aren't for sale," I replied. "Like the truth or family loyalty." Victoria had disappeared, along with her father. In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. Federal agents. The FBI's arrival was almost anticlimactic after everything else. They moved through the crowd with practiced efficiency, heading straight for Marcus. As they led him away in handcuffs, past shocked guests, and frantically clicking cameras. He looked back at me one last time. For a moment, I saw a flicker of that little boy who used to share his dreams with me. "Why, Em?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I would have given you anything." "Because you forgot something important, little brother," I said softly. "Success built on lies isn't success at all. It's just a bigger lie." The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. Mitchell Tech's collapse made headlines for weeks. Tech Wonderkind revealed as corporate spy, ran alongside Wedding Day arrest exposes Silicon Valley fraud. The FBI's investigation uncovered even more than I had: a network of cybercrimes spanning 3 continents. Victoria and the Blackwoods quickly distanced themselves, their PR team working overtime to paint themselves as victims. Most of Mitchell Tech's clients filed lawsuits. The stolen money was traced and returned, including my $200,000 in loans. I testified at Marcus's trial 3 months later. He didn't look at me once during my testimony about how he'd used my banking access to facilitate his crimes. He took a plea deal in the end: 15 years with possibility of parole, plus restitution to all his victims. The day after the sentencing, I received a letter from him in prison. "Dear M," it began, "I forgot who I was trying to become someone else. I forgot that real success was having a sister who believed in me enough to sacrifice everything. I forgot that the dreams we shared were worth more than all the fake success in the world. I know it's too late to fix what I broke, but I hope someday you can forgive me. Your brother, Marcus." I read the letter several times, tears blurring the words. Then I put it away in a drawer and went back to work. Not at the bank. I'd taken a new job, heading up fraud prevention for a major tech company. Turns out my experience with Mitchell Tech made me quite valuable in that field. Sometimes, late at night, I look at old photos of Marcus and me from before all this happened. I remember the brother who dreamed of changing the world, who just wanted to make something amazing. I wonder where that boy went wrong, and if he's still in there somewhere behind prison walls. But I don't regret what I did, because sometimes loving someone means holding them accountable. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let the truth come out, no matter how much it hurts. They say money changes people, but I've learned it's not the money. It's what people are willing to do for it. The choices they make, the lines they cross, the people they're willing to sacrifice. In the end, Marcus got what he'd always wanted: his name in headlines, his story talked about in Silicon Valley, just not in the way he planned. As for me, I've got a new dream now: helping other companies protect themselves from people like my brother, making sure other families don't have to go through what I did. Because some things really aren't for sale: truth, integrity, family. And sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones we learn from those we love the most.